Rosita Cooper, and we're on Living Your Dreams with Rosita. My guest is Bradley Stryker. He is a 35-time award winner, film writer, and producer. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing awesome. Awesome. So tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
I can start way back. Originally from Pacific Northwest, so I grew up in just outside of Seattle. But I started, I guess, in front of the camera about 20 years ago. I've been acting for about 20 years. I made my living doing that for the last 20 years, so that's been a blessing. And about a decade ago, I started writing, directing, producing some short films, and then that eventually worked its way to feature films. And the film you were just referencing, Land of Smiles, is a film that I made a few years back. And that film, when we decided we were going to distribute it, we weren't ever planning on doing the film festival thing. We were just going to sell it and move on, and didn't like any of the deals we got offered. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to just keep the movie for myself for a minute, and I'm going to do the film festival thing to see what happens. And lo and behold, it had a really good run, had a really good life there. So, the film to date, I think, is won. You think you're right. It's won 35 awards. Been nominated for a bunch of other things. And I'm going to be honest, it's a surprise. Because, we made a genre movie. So we thought we were just making something to make some money. And the thing about it that I think people gravitate towards is it's still very character-based and the acting's very good. So all of a sudden people log in to watch, a genre movie, and all of a sudden they're like, well, what is this? I'm getting a little more for my money than I thought, right? So we did well on the film festival circuit, and then it's up on Amazon Prime now. And it's been, distributed around the world or whatever else. And interestingly, where I find it very interesting is the world we're living in now, because now everybody's trying to figure out what to do, right? Mm-hmm. So myself, I do a lot of work in front of the camera still. So a lot of jobs that I have upcoming all got pushed or put off. And we're all waiting to find out when we can go back to work, because they can't make anything right now. Mm-hmm. So the brand of filmmaking that I've done most of my life, that I've been forced to do most of my life, is really kind of like indie films. So Land of Smiles we shot in New York, and then we went to Thailand. And when we went to Thailand, we brought just a skeleton crew, which is a very, very simple crew. The basics, because we didn't have enough money to pay for a big, shebang. And now that kind of filmmaking is going to become a very popular thing, because when you work on a big TV show, you got 60 to 100 people in one tight space. We can't do that anymore, can you? So now you're going to have to find a way to do it with 10 or 12 or 15 people, which is interesting, because it's what I've been forced to do just because of different things at different points in my career. I've done it both ways. And so, it's going to be an interesting future from here on. I've been having a lot of phone calls and talks with people about, how do you do this? How do you do what you do? And I'm like, well, you do it usually out of necessity. So now you're talking about approaching it from a different place, which is, I guess it isn't. It's the same thing as necessity, but it's a different kind of necessity. It's not, we don't have the money. This is the only way we can do it now. So, yeah. So that's the past of me all the way to the present day.
So when working on films and stuff, you say you started with acting. Do you feel as though that acting prepared you for the writing and actually the producing and stuff? Because I feel as though I already knew how to direct, but me being on sets of big films, it actually showed me what goes on behind the scenes and how can I change stuff to make it work, So have you feel as though that being on other films, working as an actor, actually helped with your producing of your films?
Well, 1,000%. And first of all, when you're talking about writing, directing, acting, you're talking about storytelling. Mm-hmm. Now, you're talking about different pieces of that storytelling. So an actor shows up and they're a crafts person. That's job is I'm showing up with them playing Frank. Today I'm playing Frank. My job is to take all of my training and everything and give you the best Frank that you can possibly have in your film. But I myself cannot make it a good movie. Because it takes a lot of moving parts, obviously, to do this, right? And everybody is doing their little piece of the storytelling, and obviously the director in film is the one who has the most to do, the most responsibility. Whereas it's more of a team effort in TV, but really the writer has a lot more power in TV as the storyteller, because we don't have time for the director to figure it out. On top of the fact that the director's job isn't to figure it out in TV as much, because every show has its own tone, its own look, its own feel, and you have to come in and facilitate giving them that. You can't come in and go, now here's my indie film version of, Arrow. They're like, we don't want to watch your indie film version of Arrow. We want you to give us an episode of Arrow, right? Whereas in film, the director gets to decide everything, all the way down to the music, the way he shoots it, the music he's going to put in, right? So back to just the question about acting specifically, to be completely honest, it was my first introduction into, like, what are we doing in film telling stories? What is this about? And quickly learning that, okay, so my job is to, like, without getting too technical, my character needs to start here, and then my character is going to end over here, and over the course of this journey, there's going to be some change that needs to happen in order for the whole thing to work. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What I find so intriguing is, because I've been in a million acting classes, and I know a million actors, and I love actors, I love artists, I love people that have chosen to do this, because it's quite insane to choose to do for a living. But what I love so much about it is it's a total collaboration. We got nothing without each other. And part of what I also kind of understand in terms of team, from playing sports growing up, and then also from now making films myself, and even just from being an actor, I learned this we're only as good as our weakest link. So if you show up and there's another actor, or there's a director, or there's bad script or something, you're never going to be able to overcome that. And which is an interesting challenge as a director, because as a director, now your job becomes even more important, all the way back to when you're sitting down and you're casting a project. I thank God every day that I actually understand what acting is, because so many filmmakers don't. And when you watch their movies, you're like, oh my God, what a great story. The directing is beautiful, but who chose these people to be in front of the camera? Because they're not, and not even that they're bad actors, they're just not cast appropriately. And you go, and it's too bad, because you see that happen a lot. So I kind of view that starting there fed the whole beast, if you will, and educated the whole thing, which has been a nice blessing. And to be honest, I love that I get to do all of it now. So.
Yeah, I feel as though as well, an actor or actress can make or break a film. If you cast the wrong person, or you can cast a really good actress or actor, and they can bring out the simplest film, and make it pop. But you can take a bad actor or actress and put them in from an awesome, script, and it can flop. So
you're 100% right. Sorry, my son just ran in here.
That's okay.
We got all sorts of cute people in here. What is this guy doing here? We got babies all in this place now. You are 100% right about that. About casting. What I also find interesting is that as I'll watch a movie sometimes, and I'll see somebody who's miscast, or I'll see a very, very, very talented actor who's missing the mark somehow. And I don't often, because I'll be watching movies with people and they'll be like, oh, this actor's blowing it, or whatever they'll say, their version of the story. And I'm like, actually, nobody's helping them collaborate, is the way I'll interpret that. Because I actually believe a lot of times that people could have done it. They just didn't have anybody helping to guide them.
I was just going to say that too. It's up to the director too to see everything that's going up, to see that this is not it. Let's do it this way, or try another way, because that isn't cutting it, you know. So I see a lot of stuff on sets too.
And there's also some misleading things.
You say what?
You're right. There's also some misses. As any sort of whatever it is, you want to be an actor, writer, director, whatever. I'm a firm believer in education, growth, and you got to constantly be studying whatever craft it is you chose to do. So when I sit down to watch movies, I sit down and watch it with a notebook, and I take notes. And I'm like, okay, this, and this. I'm still enjoying the movie, but I'm also learning. And I'm going, no, that doesn't work for this reason. And I found over the course of doing this, I don't know, probably 600 movies at this point, that you often find reasons why things really work and why things really don't work. They're wildly talented, some of the best directors in the world who say, I don't talk to actors ever, I let them do what they want to do. Well, that's wonderful. It's a wonderful thing that they get to do because they work with, you know, Meryl Streep and Daniel Day-Lewis, and you just let those people do what they need to do. Sure. But that's very young filmmakers to hear that. Because then they go, I just let my actors do what they do. And I'm like, you can't let somebody that's been acting for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years do what they need to do. Because guess what? I've been doing this for 20 years and I still use some help. And everybody I know that's been doing this for 20 years could still use some help, right? It's like it's because there's this idea. I think what it really is I think that if you've never tried acting before, it's a scary thing. And so you go, I don't want to mess with whatever they're doing over there because that's crazy time stuff.
Yeah.
And the truth is it actually isn't. It's just very human. And once you get past the that part of it, some of my favorite moments in this business have been those specific collaboration moments, whether it's me directing or me acting, and there's a moment of synergy, and then the camera rolls. And magic happens, and everybody gets really quiet and goes, "I think we got it." Nobody celebrates because they're like, "If what just happened, I think just happened, really just happened." We need to walk away quietly and just hope that everything, you know what I mean? You don't want to ruin that magic, and that only comes from people being educated and knowing and doing the work.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, you know, taking notes and stuff, because when me and my brother was small, we used to watch movies and figure and basically chart down everything that we seen was wrong in the movie. And now I direct, you know. Sure. So when I'm acting, people would be like, well, did you take classes? No, I just been basically studying this all my life. Ever since I was a little kid, I loved watching movies and mimicking what I seen, as well as finding out what was done wrong.
So technically, you've been studying acting since you were 3.
Real small. Me and my brother. So, like, on my set, I had my assistant and somebody else that was working for me, you know, since I was the director, but I had a part in the film. And I'm like, okay, look, when I'm acting, y'all tell me what I'm doing wrong. So I'm acting, I'm like, why ain't nobody saying nothing? They're because you're right. And I'm like, but y'all supposed to be directing me. But they was like, ain't nothing wrong.
You know, I've done that before, and that's no joke. Doing all of it at once.
Exactly, because you be looking for somebody to stop you, you know, at what you're doing, but you know, they're not seeing nothing wrong. But to you, it's like, okay, somebody should say something. You know, how am I doing? I want to see your film. I want to see the recording or something.
You're 100% right.
Yeah. So, what did you want to be when you was a child?
Professional basketball player. I want to play basketball, and so when I was really little, I was really good, and then flash forward to junior high, which is like 7th, 8th, 9th grade. I was a very late developer, so everybody was growing beards and becoming men, and I was still a little guy with a squeaky voice. And I was a junior in high school. I think I was 5, 7. And there's a guy when I played in junior high. I was on a team I was out of Seattle that traveled around the United States playing, and I was 5'7", and the center on our basketball team was 6'11". Yeah, huge. Everybody was huge. I looked like this little midget guy. All I could do was shoot, right? So, being that I never kind of caught up to myself, that dream just died when all of a sudden I was surrounded by giants with beards, and I was a little squeaky guy. And ironically, I kind of became the team clown, and that just became my new role in that. And what's interesting is the arts weren't really big. And they weren't really big in necessarily my family, but also just they weren't necessarily big even where I was growing up. Sports was. So all things sports won, right?
Uh-huh.
But I always had this need with my family, especially to kind of entertain them. And so when I finally was older and I moved into this industry, my parents were not surprised, especially my mother. They were not surprised at all. They're like, because, I've been entertaining them since I was a child.
Yeah.
But there was never really any outlet for me to do it outside of that. So just, messing around at home. And so I had that transition from going to be a sports star to not, for lack of a better way to put it, is God didn't make this body to be a professional athlete. So, you know what I mean? Like, I did what I can do with it, and this is all we got, and now moving on, right? But even with that said, I'm still very, physically active and things because that's just part of my life, part of kind of like my moving meditation, as I like to think of it. But then when I kind of transitioned into the arts, I did it at a later age, so it did take a minute for me to figure it out. Because you come from a world in sports where, I don't know the right way to even put it, but the thing about the arts is that it needs to be there needs to be a little bit more fluidity and needs to be more malleable to really work. And actually, now that I've learned a lot more about the way things work in performance, sports actually should be that way too. But what you're taught when you're playing sports growing up is there's a right way and a wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
So you do it, which is actually, it's an interesting conversation. If you could talk about that with anything, because there is an idea of the right versus the wrong way, and that's a very dangerous conversation when it comes to the art. Because I've seen a lot of people that did something the wrong way. Like, here's an interesting example. You ever see the movie Memento?
No.
Okay, so Memento is this film. The people who write screenwriting books think it's the worst written movie in the history of ever because it breaks all their rules. When the fact is, it's just really fucking smart. Excuse my language, but it's just really intelligent, right? And so these people are like, it's wrong. It's wrong. I'm like, it's pretty right. It's pretty amazing, And I think it's Nolan, Christopher Nolan. I'm like, anyway. It is it's a perfect example of that idea. Long answer to the fact that I'm like anybody else. Like, I had ideas of things I wanted to do, and I was figuring it out. And I didn't know I wanted to be a writer or a director until I'd been acting for a decade. And somebody asked me if I wanted to direct a short play, and so I did. And everything that came after that was informed by how much fun I had in that one moment. Going, oh wow, this is actually really exciting because you have more control over the storytelling. And so, like, I'm still figuring new things out and growing in that way too. Like, even though I love what I do, I don't know where this is going to end, and what version of storytelling.
So they said that your brand is honest, subtle, and terrifying.
That is a quote from one person, correct? Yes.
Okay.
Honest, subtle, and terrifying.
So tell us about that. It's kind of, what inspired you to do like terrifying movies?
Well, which is interesting because mostly the business side inspired me to do that. So when I first started writing, I wrote dramas and comedies mostly, realizing really quick that the market for dramatic films is very small. in terms of making money doing it, especially, right? For every Moonlight that we see and blows our mind, there's 50, 60, 70,000 that didn't work, or that were beautiful films, but nobody paid $1 for them. So when I realized the genre films are easier to sell, blah, 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 I started studying at those specific genres. And I do enjoy horror a little bit, but that's not really my favorite. My favorite is thriller. So the one through line from Land of Smiles all the way to the last 3 scripts that I've optioned, they're all thrillers. So Land of Smiles was a mystery thriller, suspense thriller, a little bit of horror in there. And then the last 2 were action thrillers, action thriller. And then the last one was a psychological thriller. And that's because I really like exploring the kind of the edge of humanity. And I really, there's a word I love in filmmaking, in juxtaposition. And so one of the things that I use in Land of Smiles that I'll probably use in almost everything I do is, have you ever been to Thailand before?
No.
You see pictures of it?
Yeah.
Okay, so Thailand is home to some of the most beautiful beaches in the world, like breathtaking. And you can rent a beach hut on one of these islands for like $20 a night. That's just what they cost. Sometimes they're $5, you know. And you open up your doors and you're looking at one of the most beautiful beaches in the world. So when I was in my early 30s, I just finished working on a TV show. I went on a trip for 2 months, Southeast Asia, just to clear my head. And when I got there, I discovered this beautiful country, and I was like, man, if you told a thrilling story in this setting, the beauty versus the terrifying, right? Those two things, they completely juxtapose each other. So that word juxtaposition is one of my favorite words in filmmaking. So the visual juxtaposition of like unbelievable beauty with the juxtaposition of this like kind of very scary, dark at times story where these human beings are being pushed to these extreme places. And so I'm a big, big fan of that. And so I think the terrifying comes from, like, even in Land of Smiles, if anybody has a chance to watch it, the lead actor did a wonderful job, just a beautiful job, but she is an emotional wreck because she's being manipulated and she's very scared. But I wasn't interested in saying, what happens if I scare this young woman? I was interested in saying, what happens if you put a human being in this position? How would they be able to deal with it? On that, you know, that tightrope of almost falling apart at all times while you're walking down this insanely beautiful beach. And I was like, wow, that's interesting for me. And so that's what I explored. And that's also why I think people were like, oh, you know, here, have a bunch of trophies. I think part of that was, oh, this makes so much sense and so exciting to watch visually, but so like, oh my, like as a human being, you can't help but feel for her. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that part of that too, the honest part, that's what that is. And all the part is, it's a big version of how we tell these stories for me is they have to be somewhat subtle. The minute they start to indulge in themselves, then you have something that's almost campy or it's just not my thing. You know, when you turn on a movie and it's just so overly ridiculously like over the top, like all that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it, but it's not what I want to do. So.
Exactly. So I see that you have won an award in London Film Awards, American Film Awards, Los Angeles Film Review, Toronto Independent Film. So tell us a little about that. Well,
so you mentioned the word brand, which is interesting. So part of what I was trying to figure out as a young, call myself young, as a filmmaker even, is everybody's making movies nowadays, right? But very few people are taking the time to actually educate themselves on how to do it and to do it well. Mm-hmm. So what's happened is we now have a world where there's a lot of noise. And what I mean by noise is, what does Sundance get? 17,000 films a year now, something like that, submitted. Like, it's insane. And they take less than 50. I don't know. It's you know, and 48 of those have mega stars in them. So what I realized is like, how do you get through all of the noise, and how do you find a brand for yourself? And so then I started doing research and submitting to all these film festivals and things like that, and realized that one of the ways to do it once I started winning awards was, oh, well, if people are going to react this way to what I've made, then instead of submitting my movie to 5, I'll submit my movie to 35. And so what ended up happening ultimately is that a lot of these award shows liked what they saw, contacted us. You won an award with us. Sometimes they have an award show. We get to go and, dress nice, and they hand you a trophy. Sometimes I can't go, so I ask one of my collaborators from the movie to go. And sometimes you just the award shows up in the mail because that's just how it happens, right? Ultimately, what it is again going back to this idea of a brand. It's like, if people are going to react, and this is the thing that all filmmakers and any of your people that are listening that are creative should know, as many people love it, there will be that many people that hate it. So that's, for me, the best reaction I can get from any sort of thing that I make film is love it or hate it. It means they're reacting emotionally to it. The worst reaction I feel like I can get is, oh, it's fine. Because that just means it's forgettable. That means that it's like, it's not their thing, it's not, nothing really happened. And I know that too, because I've seen so many movies, and so many movies are forgettable, right? And you're like, it's kind of forgettable. So, having all these people say these wonderful things is great, but you also have to remember that I've also done a really good job not to listen to somebody. I've had people send me emails telling me essentially I've had people send me emails telling me how awful I am in my job, and ask me to not do it anymore. I'm like, what is this? Like, this is insane. And what I came to realize is I was like, some people have too much time on their hands. B, it's like it made me angry, or it made me, feel bad, or whatever it was at first.
You said, say A again. You was breaking up. Say A again. You said too many people got too much time on their hands.
Sometimes people got too much time on their hands. That's for sure. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And so what I'm really saying is the good and the bad. You take it all, and you say thank you for the good. You say thank you for the bad, and you just keep going. Like, for me, it's just about keep working, keep going, keep creating.
Yeah, but that's true what you said. The A. Because a lot of people have too much time on their hand, because a lot of times that's where the hating come in, the people that sit behind the computer and judge everybody else's stuff, but not really doing anything themselves.
Not doing anything themselves, and that's not my thing. I'm not interested in this world, this like hate culture, this like it's and I know some people think it's really fun and fantastic, and I just think they're really bored. And you know what? The truth is like, I also get it. Life is hard, man. And so when you see people accomplishing things, it might piss you off. You might be like, I don't like that person. I just don't like them. When the truth is it's like, all right, now we have all these platforms, so you can try and do what you want to say, I just don't listen to any of it. It's fine. I say good for you. Good luck. I hope things work out for you in the end, because I also know when the minute they hit enter on their computer, they're still sitting in all that anger and hate and negativity anyway, and
you
they have to live with it all day.
Exactly, and you got your awards and your success, and let that speak for itself.
Exactly. And I'm still just going to keep doing what I do no matter what anyway, right?
Exactly.
I'm never going to listen to either of those people, so pointless.
So what do you plan on doing next?
Well, I've got a couple of jobs in front of the camera whenever I can do them. And then things are shifting. So I had optioned, one of the scripts I optioned was in pre-production. They were going to shoot it in Thailand again, ironically. And that was going to shoot in March, but obviously that got pushed. So that one will be, now that one I was just the writer on, and then I optioned it. Now they're going to go off and make it. That one will shoot when the world starts up again. And then I have 3 other projects. One of them is a 2-location movie I wrote, which now is very easy, very exciting to people, because they're like, ooh, we can make this thing. This is easy. Another one is a film that I optioned and that I got back. And and it looks like I've found some people that want to invest in it. So I'm putting together a package on that right now. And then I'm writing a movie that is about what we're going through in the world right now, mixed with obviously a story. So, you know, it's another thriller, and it does involve, you know, the pandemic, and it actually involves the pandemic in the future. And it does involve, you know, trying to capitalize on these new ways of filming things, with using less location, less crew, less all that. I think ultimately, because of how long this is going to last, that's going to be a thing for a couple of years. We're going to be seeing who can really, if you can find a way to start making movies, you're going to win right now, because most people aren't going to, because it's going to be too hard to get it insured. It's going to be too hard to get people to show up to work. So, you know, it's the short answer to your question is I'm accepting what's happening, and I'm figuring out a way to roll with it.
Okay, so what advice would you give an upcoming film producer, writer, somebody that's going to get in film?
I would give you two pieces of advice. One, educate yourselves every day. Educate yourselves every day. Read everything. Watch everything. Just consume what it is. If you want to be a TV person, consume all of it. If you want to be a film person, consume all of it. Read all the articles. Read about watch all the movies. Take the notes. Take the writing classes. If you take an acting class, even if you don't want to be an actor, just do it. Trust me. Even if you don't want to be a writer, take a writing class. You understand story structure. Do it. Trust me. And then the second thing is, eventually, you got to just do it. You got to just start making things. And it's not like it used to be. You used to need a lot of money. And now I can tell you, because I've done it, maybe your first short film can cost you $3,000. Maybe it can cost you $300. You got to find a way to do it. And there's a million excuses why we can't do it, isn't it? And also I have a lot of friends who are doing the thing where they're like, I'm just going to wait. They've written, they wrote their one or two screenplays, and they're like, I'm waiting for the $3 million to show up. And I'm like, pretty bad idea, but totally up to you, because you're going to be waiting for a long time. And that's the other thing too, is like, you gotta do it a lot, and it's okay to do it a lot. And so, like, if anybody's a writer, a piece of advice is, don't, if you write a rough draft, don't make everybody read it. It's not good. It's just isn't very good. You got to spend more time than one draft. You know what I mean? And I can say that because I've written 27, 28 screenplays now. I've written 3 TV shows. Like, you got to just keep doing it and rewriting it and doing it and rewriting it and challenging your story. And I've been writing for 7 years, when all of a sudden I just enrolled in a series of screenwriting classes that ended up taking me 2.5 years to do, and made me so much better. And I did it solely based on the fact that I was like, okay, I am educated up to this point. I feel good up to this point, but I think there's something else out there. And I found it. And you go, wow, okay, so anything is possible as long as you're willing to put in the work. And the other thing too is like, for anybody, just a piece of advice is like, your life can be work, and don't neglect the you part of your life either, right? I know some people, and I've done this myself, I've made the mistake of making work everything. Dangerous. Because work can be everything up to a certain point, but if you haven't built anything outside of that, you're going to come out years down the road just staring in the mirror going, what did I do? How did I end up here? Which is why I had little humans running in here while we're doing this interview, because I'm trying to put time and energy into both, right?
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so on Living Your Dreams with Rosita, I have a part of the interview to where I would like a person to help me to inspire other people to not give up on their dreams or to follow their dreams. So on that part, I want you to give something that happened in your life that made you basically almost want to give up on your dreams, and how did you get over that?
Well, you want me to just choose one?
Well, you can choose one.
There's been a lot of them. Well, one of the most basic ones I can give you is for every person that reads one of my screenplays and loves it, somebody else read it and told me I should stop writing. I mean, the one that's the most prevalent in my life is that I was working on I was doing an acting gig years ago. I was working on a very well-known TV show, and the TV show was going into another season, and I was coming back from Europe, and I got a call that they were going to be replacing me on the TV show, and I was very confused. Now, I was originally cast as a very small part, and then they decided the next season they were going to make it a big part, and they decided that they were going to go in another direction, and I said, well, I'm just a little confused. Like, so we went through my agents, and I went through this whole thing, and got all the way to the end of the conversation with the casting and everybody else. And at the end of the conversation, they're like, listen, we're not, and this is quite funny and awful and interesting. We're not really allowed to say this, but like, let's just be straight up. They want somebody better looking than Bradley to play this part. And so, and I said, okay, understood. Because we even offered, like, just let me audition against anybody else. Let's make it about the work. And they didn't want to make it about that. And so I had to allow that to disappear. And it ended up being a very good job for somebody else. And it ended up being a point at which I felt very powerless. And I was like, ooh, that really stung. So I had to process that and process that this is part of what we do. It entered a bit of a dark phase at that point, not necessarily taking care of myself as much as I do now, but I found my way through it. And the one thing I never stopped doing, even when I did want to give up, was I still kept doing the work. So, and I don't even really know why, to be honest. And it was a couple years later, about 3 or 4 years later, I had one of the best years of my life, and things just really started to click. And I think at the point that happened, I was about 4 or 5 years into this. Now I'm 20 years in, and I've made a nice living doing it. So, if I would have let that kind of take me out at the knees, I'm not sure what I'd be doing. But I do know that I wouldn't be doing what I love doing. So, yeah, and I wish I could tell you how I got through it and give you the recipe. So probably part of it's me being stubborn. Part of it also is like, as you and I were already discussing, everybody has opinions.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody does. As long as you're willing to keep going and put in the work, you will prevail. But like, also don't do that thing where it's like it can't all be fairy dust.
Mm-hmm.
So it can't. I know a lot of people who are like, I really believe in myself. And I'm like, that's amazing. Good. So what are you doing to feed that? What do you mean? Well, if you're a writer, are you writing every day? Well, no. Oh, well, that doesn't make any sense then. Your belief in yourself isn't going to matter anymore then, right? So it's the two things together. It's the stay focused, believe in yourself, and just keep going. And even when it feels insane, just keep going, because I've had so many wonderful moments after that moment. And the other thing too, I can say as a good story that completely counteracts that one. There was a moment years later when I was gonna quit. I was gonna move on. I was living in New York City, and I was flying back. I split time between. I'm American, but my wife's Canadian, so I married into Canada, and so I work in Canada a fair bit too. And I was flying back to Vancouver my agent doesn't even know us to, but essentially going to go back for a couple of weeks and kind of let her know that I think I was going to be done and find something else to do with my life. And I landed in Seattle, my phone was buzzing, and I pick up my phone, and there's a message from my agent saying, you just got put on hold for this new TV show. And I was like, what? And so I called her. I was like, when did we tape the audition with this? Because you didn't. I said, what do you mean? Why am I on hold? Doesn't make any sense. I haven't worked in a while. She's like, well, they watched your reel and they loved it. And I was like, huh? So then I just think to myself, this isn't real. It's not happening. So we finished, got to Vancouver, and then the next morning at 7 a.m. I was in the coffee shop writing like I always do. And my phone's ringing, and it's my agent. She goes, you didn't get it. And I was like, yeah, what was that? That's weird. And she goes, you got something better. I said, I'm sorry, what? And so sure enough, I ended up working on this show called the Lizzie Borden Chronicles. And 4 days later, I was flying from Vancouver to Halifax, doing this wardrobe and everything, flew back to New York, met my wife for a minute, and then for the next 4 months back and forth, I was going from Halifax to New York working on the show. And one of the best experiences I've ever had in my life. And I asked the producer who I became friends with, and he's one of my mentors now, really, but I said, how did you just decide to randomly hire me? And he goes, watched your reel. He goes, oh, I thought to myself, is this guy good? I mean, he's definitely not going to be bad for us. I don't know if he's, what did he say? He said, I don't know if he's a crazy person or not, because my reel is pretty crazy. But either way, the work will be good. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is insane. So even though something can happen like the first story I told you, this can also happen.
Yeah.
And the thing to remember about that is at that point, I was probably 13 years into being a professional actor, and I reached a point when it just wasn't really working out at that point. And I decided it was probably, and I had a manager in New York. She looked at my resume, and I'd worked a fair bit, and she said, you've done all this? And I said, yeah. She goes, it didn't work out. I said, what do you mean? She goes, you have too many credits. And I said, what does that mean? She said, if you have all these credits and you didn't hit, then it just didn't work. You should figure out something else to do. And I was like, wow. And so I took that and was like, all right, I'm done. And instead, the universe told me something different and provided. And I believe that happened completely based on the fact that I hadn't stopped and I was just still going version of it, right?
And see, I tell folks all the time.
Showed up.
I tell people all the time on the show that a lot of people get.
Say that one more time.
I tell people all the time on the show, a lot of people try to give up on following their dreams right at the breakthrough. So when something happened bad, it's not necessarily meaning for it to be bad in your life, to turn your life around to a whole bunch of bad stuff happening. It's actually setting you up for what is right around the corner. So a lot of people don't realize that the breakthrough is coming right after the bad things. And that's why I like the testimonial parts on the show, is because people give up right when their breakthrough is getting ready to happen. So I like to inspire people to not give up and continue to follow their dreams regardless of what goes on in their life. And what you said about you were stubborn and you didn't give up. Sometimes it's good to be stubborn when it comes to following your dreams. You know, we have to be stubborn sometimes. We have to not listen to what other people want for us, or us not giving up and us going harder because that's what we want to do. And that's what makes us happy. You know, so it works.
And you just touched on it. So also to remember that, of the people that, even if it's family and they're like, what do you, if your dream is something that's not traditional, part of the reason they want you to do something else is that they're scared for you. Because it's hard, and it's a hard life, and they know that. But then I have a lot of very successful friends that are in other businesses, and they have lots and lots of money and nice cars and nice this, that, and the other, and they're not very happy people because they're just making money and they have no idea. I have some friends that are like, I have no idea what would make me happy. And I'm like, wow, that's a weird place to be in the middle of your life. You have no idea. And they abandon, and so we kind of get to choose our own medicine, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I know a lot of artists, myself included, that wish we had much bigger bank accounts, but at the same time, you do remember that you wake up and do what you want and love. So you gotta kind of go, don't be, you know, like just keep, and that's why I say just find a way, keep going, find a way. And the other thing I would say to people too is like, know what it is you're trying to do. So if you want to be, if your thing is you really want to be famous, and you just think acting is a way to get there, the truth is there's a lot easier ways to become famous. Like just get really good at a social media app. You know, there's a lot of other ways to do it. But this particular path of being a storyteller is not necessarily the easiest way, because, I mean, trust me, there's some people that just look great and they don't really have to put in the work and they can do what they need to do, and those people are an exception. But I think something to remember the rest of us is like, you choose this path for anything in TV and film because you really ultimately like being a storyteller. If that doesn't interest you, then don't do it. If you want to do it just to be famous, you're going to be really unhappy when people are like, let's talk about storytelling. And you're like, I don't know, I don't care. because that's what it's really about, you know.
I feel as though everybody has something that they wanted to do, even if it was from just being as a child. You know, it's just like me. I grew up wanting to be a writer, a dancer, a mentor. You know, I wanted to be a police officer. So instead of becoming police, I played police on TV shows. You know, so, but I was the kid that talked all the time. So I do radio and reality show. I talk. So, you know, it's people that's actually doing what they love to do, but don't realize they can actually make a career out of doing it.
That's right. And the trick is easy. Just start doing it.
Exactly. Okay.
Not rocket science. You just got to start doing it.
Okay, so I would like for you to give a closing of some very inspiring words to help encourage some people, just some words that you feel as though that people can grow from the rest of their life.
Oh, three words. It's very simple. Find your breath. And what I mean by that is I move really quickly, which you probably can't really tell anymore, but I move really quickly and I get a lot done. And I was just running through my life at 1,000,000 miles an hour, not enjoying anything. You know, hey, you got this job. Great, who cares? Moving on. Great, you got an award. Moving on. Who cares? Always going. And then a few years ago, I decided to spend some time finding my breath, breathing. Whether it be yoga, whether it be meditation, whether it be just sitting down, closing your eyes and breathing. And then what find your breath equals then means you're able to live in the present moment. Living in the present moment is everything. It's very hard to do. But ultimately it makes you better at no matter what you're choosing to do with your life. And so we're lucky too, right? With all the technology, there's a million ways for them to help us find our breath. The hardest part is to find the discipline to actually do it. And know that it doesn't need to be it doesn't need to be a 3-hour commitment a day. It can be 5 minutes if that's all you got, and then it could be 10 minutes someday, and then maybe someday it's 20 minutes. It will make your life better when you can sit and breathe and close your eyes. And when I'm doing my acting work, when I was a younger guy in my trailer, I'd be doing all sorts of things. Now, right before I'm going to work, I sit and I close my eyes and I breathe. And then I show up and I'm very present. And that's just a really nice place to work from. And it all comes from those 3 words, find your breath. So.
Wow. So tell people how they can find you.
My name everywhere, Bradley Stryker, BradleyStryker. And you can find me, I'm not big on the Twitter. Instagram's my favorite. I think I'm still on Facebook. That's mostly for family stuff. And then my name, BradleyStryker.com, and then my film company is StrikeForceFilms.com. Strikeforce having a hyphen in it. But you can find all that on IMDb as well. I'm literally not hard to find. You can find everything. It's all just out there if you know how to use your computer.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being on my show. I really appreciate you being on here. And everyone remember, let no one and nothing stop you from following your dreams. I am Rosita Cooper. My guest is Bradley Strykers. And remember to follow your dreams. Peace and love, peace and blessings. Peace, everyone.
Thank you, love.
Thank you.